Welcome, everyone. Big night tonight as we are on the eve of Lori Vallow-Daybell returning inside the courtroom. It's a huge hearing, very unpredictable to say the least about what may happen in that courtroom tomorrow. Of course, you'll see it on Court TV. Got my team of journalists, legal journalists with us tonight, the best in the business. With me tonight, Ashley Banfield, Julie Grant, Ted Rollins. Sit tight for just a moment. First, let's find out what we expect to happen in the courtroom. Court TV correspondent Chanley Painter joins us now with the latest. All right, Chanley, fill us in first of all, the latest of this hearing tomorrow in Idaho.
Well, after being postponed twice due to COVID-19 delays, the bond hearing will be held tomorrow afternoon in Madison County, Idaho for Lori Vallow-Daybell. She will be there in person, and those parties involved, as well as those with court's permission to be present within the courtroom because it's very limited access due to COVID-19, they will be required to wear masks, covering their nose, covering their mouth, and maintain social distance of 6 feet unless they live in the same household. Now, we know we've got confirmation that the state will call one witness to testify. And as far as Chad Daybell, we don't have confirmation yet whether or not he will actually take the stand as the husband of Lori Vallow or any defense witnesses that might be called during the hearing tomorrow. Lori Vallow-Daybell is being held on $1 million bail. That was reduced from $5 million bail on March 6th during another bond reduction hearing. She faces several charges, Vinny, including those 2 felony child abandonment charges.
All right, so what grounds did Vallow use to get this hearing that's happening tomorrow?
Her attorney actually filed a motion, an emergency motion this week to keep the hearing on tomorrow's date, saying that the conditions at the jail, these safety COVID-19 conditions, are virtually making it impossible for him to keep an attorney-client relationship, a privileged relationship. He can't communicate privately with his client. He has to pass sensitive documents around through other people. They meet through this glass. He said it's violating her due process rights and she shouldn't be held in there.
And what factors are the judge, or is the judge, going to consider tomorrow during this hearing?
Right. Well, under Idaho law, there are several factors. The judge will consider whether or not to reduce her bond. Under the Bail Act, they want to look at whether or not they can ensure the appearance of Lori Vallow at the next hearing, whether she's a flight risk, basically. They want to ensure the integrity of the court process. The protection of witnesses is a consideration, as well as public safety concerns. The judge will balance all of those factors given the evidence presented at the hearing tomorrow and determine whether or not he will reduce the bail even further.
All right, big day tomorrow. Chanley Painter, thank you so much. All right, let's bring everyone back in and let's start here. One witness, at least one witness, set to testify tomorrow. Who is it going to be? Could it potentially be Chad Daybell? Julie Grant, do you think it's possible that Chad Daybell gets called to that stand?
Oh, I would love to see that, Vinny. How I would love that. We all would love that, right? I think it's doubtful, but stranger things have happened. This is a strange case from start to finish. And maybe, I don't know if the state has subpoenaed him or maybe the defense intends to call him. I think anything could happen when it comes to Mr. Doomsday. But we know that he's got counsel, so perhaps that testimony, if it happens, would be pretty limited, Vinny.
Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, if I'm the prosecution, Ted, and I'm fishing around, I know what I'm investigating. I've got a hearing. I've got subpoena power. Maybe there's a way to make it all relevant to this bail hearing.
Yeah, I think we may hear from Chad Daybell, but it's going to be the defense. We know of one witness from the prosecution. We're not sure about the defense, but we've heard that there's a possibility Chad Daybell will testify, and I do think he'll come on, if he does, as a defense witness to say Lori has a place to stay. She will be here. Here's how this will be managed. This is why she should come out and be out on bond. I think the state witness is going to be an investigator that gets up there and says, she is a flight risk and she's potentially dangerous. You've got people in this community that are scared of her. You can't let her out.
Hey, Ashley, this would be really fascinating, right? If the defense calls Chad Daybell and says, yeah, she's got a place to stay. on cross-examination, I say, is that the same? Is she going to stay in the same room, in the same bed where your last wife died?
Or in the same room where maybe those children's toys are still, hanging out. What I want to know is what's going through Chad's mind right now, and what is more important to Chad, his God or his girl? Because he's going to have to make some pretty difficult decisions as he navigates forward. And then, of course, in conference with his attorneys, he's got to decide, what does he want to say? Because whatever he says can and will be used against him if he ends up facing the music for the death of his wife, Tammy, or any of the other deaths that are associated with his now wife, Lori. The other thing, Vinny, I'm really curious about tomorrow is if this judge is going to do something which we all hate, and that's called a gag order. Because whenever there's a case of this magnitude that gets this much press, a lot of judges are inclined to put a gag order so that it doesn't taint the witness pool before anybody gets to actually go under voir dire. But if that's the case, that's going to make this story even more intriguing. And it usually gets the press even more fired up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, there's another part of this story that we've been uncovering night after night. And Ashley, I know you've got some new information now. We've been focusing on the other dead sibling of Lori Vallow-Daybell. And this is the one who's been dead for a while, a sister of hers.
Right.
What new information have you uncovered tonight?
So, the internet's alive and wild with all sorts of rumors about why this sister died 22 years ago. This was Lori's older sister by 8 years, and we uncovered her gravesite. This is the picture that we got just yesterday after the grounds crew cleaned it off. It had been overgrown, covered in mud, and barely even legible. So the grounds crew at the cemetery actually cleaned it up, took the photo, and sent this to us. Stacey Lynn Cox-Cope actually has a pretty fascinating story, as it turns out. We do know how she died now, and this comes directly from her brother's book, because her brother Adam, again, that'd be Lori's brother as well, wrote a book called My Crazy Radio Life. He published it last year, self-published, and in it he said, my older sister Stacey had passed away while living with my parents in San Antonio, Texas. She'd gone through a terrible divorce. While she was very ill, her husband kidnapped her daughter, who was age 8, and she was unable to make contact as her health was failing. Now, that is Melanie. That's Melanie Boudreau, who's so integral to this case. That's the daughter that they're talking about, that, Adam is alleging was kidnapped from his now dead sister. He also goes on to say she suffered from a rare form of diabetes that she contracted during her pregnancy at age 22, and that would be the pregnancy of Melanie, when Melanie was in utero. And then she said she was not only smart, Stacey Lynn, she was not only smart, she was beautiful and gracious and kind on the inside and out. She was 5 feet, 1 inch tall and weighed 100 pounds. So at least we know through Adam and his direct testimony in his book that that's how Stacey died 22 years ago, when, I do the math right, Melanie was just 9. She said it in her Facebook post that her mom died when she was 9 and that she was taken from her mother when she was 6. Adam got it a little bit wrong and said she was taken at age 8 or kidnapped at age 8. But my God, there's just so much mystery involved in every player in this already bizarre story.
Well, and that plays a lot into this, Ted, the drama of it all. When you've got all this drama surrounding you and every relationship that you have, from my perspective, makes it, okay, now I understand why this is possible, why this could have happened, because these people, Lori Vallow and her brother, her sister, her niece, all living incredibly dramatic, unusual lives. So it's not out of the ordinary to think all this stuff could potentially happen.
Yeah, what's bizarre is that they're living these dramatic lives that on the outside 4 years ago, even 2 years ago, they weren't dramatic at all. These were God-fearing people that went to church every week and studied the scriptures and had children and were just normal human beings. And then Mr. Doomsday, Chad Daybell, I believe, is the one that turned this whole thing. And he took these susceptible people on some level who were looking for something like this and turned them, and they were followers. They believed this whole doomsday nonsense that their kids turned to zombies. I look at that guy and I think he's the problem here.
Yeah, Julie, so looking at the defense now, right? They've got a preliminary hearing down the road. They're trying to get Lori Vallow out tomorrow. Do you think the trick up their sleeve might be putting Chad on the stand to testify? And I mean, if I'm Chad Daybell, that's a dangerous place to go voluntarily to help your wife. Do you think it's possible that's the trick that might be up their sleeve?
Maybe. That's a really good guess, Vinny. The only other thing I think that could be something they might try to do is to make an argument, although I think it'll fail, but I think an argument the defense might make is the one about Lori Vallow-Daybell being in jail and having that private conversation she had with her attorney accidentally recorded by the jail staff. So that's another guess I have as to who might be called by the prosecution. Perhaps it is someone from the jail to testify about the procedure and that this was accidental and that because of COVID-19, they have different processes in place for attorney-client meetings and for recordings and whatnot, and perhaps to explain how this occurred. I think the defense is going to try to pull out all the stops. We always talk about the kitchen sink defense, right? I think we're going to hear every argument under the sun from them as to why this woman should be let out and be given a bond. To me, I think it should all fail. Matter of fact, I think if anything, her bond should be increased because she's still non-compliant with that court order. And we know the whole purpose of bond is to secure a person's court appearance, number one, and to keep the community safe, number two. She's a big flight risk, Vinny. She's already fled to Hawaii once before with, Mr. Doomsday. And as far as the community safety, I worry primarily about those kids if they're still alive. If I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to argue that she's going to get out and try to finish the job if they aren't already deceased. And then two, what about all of the other unexplained deaths surrounding this woman and everyone she comes into contact with? Way too risky to let her out. I think she's staying in tomorrow.
All right, we've got a lot. Go ahead, Ted.
I think Chad's going to show up with as much money as he can. If you think of it, look at their minds, right? They think the world is going to end in July. They better be together, right? They don't care after all they need is to get her out, right? Every cent he has, everything they could do is resting on tomorrow because they've made it then. Now it's just a matter of being together, holding hands and waiting for the comet to fly by in July, and they are saved. So from their standpoint, I think this is it. This is their Super Bowl. There's nothing after July in their demented mind.
You know what, Ted? Now that I think of it, he did collect on Tammy Daybell's insurance, which I think was around just a little under $500,000.
Yeah,
now, that's not the full
plus.
bond. And if they can find a bail bondsman who's willing to foot the rest, which has been tricky, but he's got some dough, and maybe he will show up. Or maybe his God is more important than his girl.
They may have spent some money, though, on the photographer for the wedding pictures. I mean, it looked pretty high end. I think they blew some cash down in Hawaii.